Alright, for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He's a distinguished psychiatrist, mental health advocate, and innovative thinker, no other than Dr. Fred Moss.
Thanks for having me, Daniel. It's great to be here.
Welcome to Book 101, Dr. Fred, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
So my name is Dr. Fred or Fred Moss or Fred. Some people are still calling me Dr. Moss. That's fine. I'm a psychiatrist. I've been a psychiatrist for a little over 36 years. And I've been in the mental health field for another 9 years before that. So 45 years in the field. And, the reason why I say some people call me a psychiatrist is because I do things a little bit differently than the average psychiatrist. I call myself the undoctor. And as the undoctor, I like to help people get off their diagnosis altogether and get off their medicines altogether and find healing. And, we like to say unmedicate, undiagnose, and then undoctrinate. To get people to maybe look in a different direction when they're feeling uncomfortable with life than to come down the conventional mental health industry. The industry does not do what it says it does very well, and there are multiple different pathways that we can take to find comfort and purpose and joy, perhaps, in this life that have nothing to do with the psychiatric industry. So I like to be somebody having now, immersed myself in the field for 45 years and have a fair amount of experience all over this country and in other countries as well, by the way, and including Bhutan, Nepal, Thailand, and then Israel, England, Italy, and France, where I've done, telepsych work over the last 10 or 12 years. Um, there's a real opportunity to be able to address the life that we're being served up in a way that doesn't leave us disempowered with a sense of mental illness. So mental illness is kind of an arbitrary, rather arbitrary uh, set of classification that has us believe that there's something wrong with us. And what I really like people to get is that if there's something wrong with you, there's something wrong with all of us because we're all having problems managing a life that is super challenging, super, there's obstacles and challenges and hurdles everywhere. And so our goal here is to find a space where we can create a purpose, create a function, create a pathway, create an intention to actually make our lives work. And the industry itself, the conventional psychiatric industry, doesn't even promise that because it doesn't deliver on that level, and in fact, often worsens the conditions it's marketed to treat. And that's an unacceptable approach from my perspective.
Unacceptable indeed, Dr. Fred Moss. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So, integrating ancient Torah spirituality in modern healing practices. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I think what the world has known since the beginning of time, and I don't, different people have a different understanding of when that beginning of time might have taken place. Some might call it Adam and Eve, some might call it Big Bang, and some might call it whatever they call it. When humans finally started to be an important feature on this planet. Um, I think ancient practices have included some form of meditation, some form of sitting still and in silence so that we can separate ourselves out from the wild circumstances that are happening in our outside world and all the noise and internal experiences that are happening in the inside world. See, when we have these experiences, we are compelled to actually become them. And when we sit silent and we, create a space of sacredness inside of that meditation or inside of that mindfulness, we have then the capacity to separate ourselves from the circumstances so that I am no longer my circumstances. I am not my thoughts. I'm not my feelings. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my sensations. I'm not my circumstances. There's an author, a choreographer right here called me that gets to choose what I do with life as it occurs to me. And in that process, I have an opportunity of being very creative and creating a path that really can work, or a path that at least headed down a direction that has a higher likelihood of working. Many of the philosophers over time, including Buddha and many others, have made it very clear that misery is an inherent part of being a human being. So, yeah, we're all going to be faced with the possibility of very real pain and very real misery. So, what do we do with that? It's what we do with that that becomes the most important piece. So we get introduced to misery all day long, many times per day, usually. And we get to choose then whether or not to be miserable or to deal with misery, like, thank you for sharing misery, and then come back to center. That's part of the ancient practices. Other practices include like gratitude and nutrition, and hydration. Um, breathing techniques that go back a long ways as well. Our breath is the interface between life and death. It's the in and the out. Um, there's such an essential aspect of what breathing allows for. So breathing is another great one. And then yoga, tai chi, and qigong are also wholly unifying practices that go back thousands of years. And the reason they're still here is because they work. So this set of ancient practices that have worked with humanity, uh, like, when did ancient not become like relevant? At what point did ancient like be, oh, back there that used to work but it doesn't work here? Where is that bridge? Maybe there is no bridge. Maybe it's been the human condition since the beginning of time.
Dr. Fred, how do you define spirituality within your practice, and how does the Torah shape that definition?
How do I find define spirituality, and and what was the second question?
And how does the Torah shape that definition?
What is the next word? I'm so sorry. The third, how does what?
How does the Torah shape that definition?
How does the Torah?
Yes.
I see. Okay, good. So spirituality, that's, I think, more about a communication with a higher power, a communication with a creator, a communication, a connection, a surrender, a willingness, of faith that there's something out there that's way bigger than me. So that becomes my spirituality at some source. Many people call that God, or you can call it source, or you can call it, the force, or you can call it the vital force or the healing principle, whatever you want to call it. And the Torah, for me, now I was, born Jewish, so I feel very, very fortunate to have been given some of the gifts of the Torah early on in my years, and went for many decades without really caring very much about what the Torah had to say. Then I had a few different life experiences, and once I went back into the Torah, and yeah, I guess I went back really looking at it and beginning to study it a little bit. The Torah, the Kabbalah, the Mishnah, the Talmud. These things offer a level of wisdom in the allegories that far exceeds anything I've ever read in any other book, or any seen on any movie, or heard from any particular one person. So there's just an uprooting of what it means to be spiritual, how it is that one can be good with themselves, good with other people, and then good with God, such that we can live life meaningfully. And it seems to me like the more I pay attention to what the Torah has to say as a foundational, almost a manual, almost an instruction manual of how to live, the better my life becomes fairly instantly.
Let's talk about adopting ancient wisdom. How do you translate millennia old Torah rituals into tools that resonate with the modern clients?
Well, again, I don't know when, that we're all suffering from a very similar condition to what they were suffering from 2,000 or 4,000 years ago. The human experience is one of there being an interface of misery. How we think the world is going and how the world is actually going are not the same. And then we're roped into being really concerned about attachment, or we're really concerned about expectations, and or about finding a truth, asking why, or we have certain hardwire questions that go on with us. And so, the same circumstances that might have helped somebody find purpose or direction back in the day, like when the ancient texts were being used as the functional, um, template for advancing, are very useful now, meaning that the human connection, or being, or love, being with somebody, being curious about them, and then sharing authentically with them when you speak, but then listening from a sense of open mindedness, curiosity, and inquiry, that's where the real healing takes place inside of humanity. When we start realizing that we're not alone, when we start realizing that someone can understand us, when we are able to leak out the things that are very troubling to us with other people, or else see it in other people, and again feel like, wow, I'm not alone. There's a terrific sense of healing that takes place when we connect with another human, and that's been working for humanity for literally thousands of years.
Interesting indeed, Dr. Fred. What makes the Torah uniquely suited to address modern spiritual and emotional needs?
Um, Uniquely suited. I don't know. I'm not sure why it's uniquely suited. I have dabbled in the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran and the I Ching. These are also, some of the ancient texts that a lot of people utilize as their foundational launch pad. And for me, I just get to relate to every single person and every single story that the Torah has to say with by just like allowing myself to have some poetic license, some degree of, wow, I wonder, this is how Moses felt then, or this is what the experiences was for Joseph's brothers, or this is what it was like to be banished from the Garden of Eden, or this is what it was like to be afraid that Moses wasn't going to come back down, so we'll build a golden calf, or this is what it's like to trudge through a desert, or this is what it's like to have, God talking to us, or, like, what does it even mean to be released from Egypt? What is all those things? There's so many stories in there that hit home at levels that no human has ever gotten to me before, that have me really look at my whole purpose and function. And that's the Torah. Now, I have to say, I did read the Bhagavad Gita last year, and what an extraordinary piece of work that is. It serves a very similar purpose. It hits home at levels that I had no idea even existed or that somebody could tap into. And it does so not directly, not by saying, okay, look in your soul and identify this. It isn't that. It's the storylines that then have me like being inquisitive about, what was it like to be Arjuna? What was it like to, what does it mean to wage war on another part of our own community? What is it really like? And so I think, for me, the combination of the super wisdom that sits inside of the Torah, Talmud, Mishnah, and Kabbalah, and then all the sages and rabbis and thought leaders that have spoken to it or written about it over the thousands of years since then, and that it still exists despite efforts to banish it, um, make it a just ridiculously spectacular piece of literature.
Let's talk about the challenges and balance, Dr. Fred. How do you navigate skepticism about using ancient texts in evidence based healing?
I don't know anything about evidence-based healing. I'm not sure about that. If we, the problem with evidence, I mean, I certainly know what it means, but it's not like one versus the other. The truth is, evidence-based healing would absolutely include all the ancient texts because evidence-based shows that back in the day, people responded to those texts in a very, very high-level manner of being healed. So evidence-based healing, the studies that create evidence-based healing are often very slanted. There's conflicts of interest that are inherent in it, and so evidence-based healing is only a way to keep us on the same path. We come up with something new. If we come up with something new and different in the model of evidence-based healing, it is immediately rejected because there's no evidence for it. Whereas what allows really, when we go back to ancient texts, we can start seeing that, if you're really going to go evidence based, you got to keep going all the way back to the ancient text because that's what was here long before there was any thought that medications or treatment plans or hospitalizations or, even the whole allopathic medical uh, industry is very valuable. We tend to think that because it is what it is, and because there's hospitals on every corner, and because there's pharmacies on every corner, that it must be the best choice. But I'm here to say it's not the best choice at all, even if it's so-called evidence-based, because it's circular reasoning to call it evidence-based. Like, we say that, like, we disallow ourselves to go outside of the box.
Certainly, totally agree with you, Dr. Fred. And as a distinguished psychiatrist, mental health advocate, and innovative thinker, what are your short term and long term goals?
Yeah, my short term goals are, to make it through today. I got a full day here, and I got after this podcast, I got most of the afternoon off, and meaning I don't have any like formal work that's scheduled for me. But there's no really such thing as having a day off. I mean, ultimately, life just keeps lifing, and second by second is challenging, no matter whether I'm at work or I'm at home or I'm sitting on the couch or eating lunch or whatever I'm doing. So the short-term goals are to find a way to stay steady, stay upright, and to make a difference in the world. And be here with my wife, be here with my cats, enjoy the day, find a purpose, find a function. My long-term goals are to create a community of people who can release themselves from the conventions, from the conventionality of what it means to be mentally healthy. These are really arbitrary, nebulous lines that separate the healthy from the unhealthy in the world of mental health. If you're a squeaky wheel and you say life is very distracting and um, you want to call yourself ADD, it's not going to be that hard to find somebody, to find a doctor in the world of evidence-based convention who says, "Oh yeah, you're ADD. Here's some medicine. This will help you. Let me give it to you." And then you take that on, and now you're ADD. But what's really, you're bipolar disorder or narcissistic or autistic spectrum or generalized anxiety or post-traumatic stress disorder, or whatever you think you have. When in fact, what you really have is you have your life. So you have a diagnosis, Daniel. I've already figured it out. Here's your diagnosis. Your diagnosis, I got it. You're Daniel Lucas. That's your diagnosis. Period. You
Indeed.
don't have a psychiatric diagnosis.
Indeed, very well said, Dr. Fred, and good luck to your goals. Hoping for success and more success and make a difference to the world. And what is your piece of advice for those people out there suffering from mental health or ailment that you can cure?
Yeah, it's really hard to be a human. It's really hard. It's truly super difficult. Totally challenging every day, trying to make sense of it all, trying to find a purpose, trying to find a function, trying to find a reason, trying to find a vision, trying to create a future. It's really hard. And you don't have a manual, and you don't have a template, and you don't even have a role model. You don't even have anybody. You can't even like follow a path that's already paid for you. So we're all stumbling and bumbling and tumbling through a very ferocious world, a world that is difficult. And humans have been stumbling and bumbling and tumbling through difficult worlds of for all time. So the advice I have that I think is going to keep you safest and maybe allow for the continued exploration and pursuit of a life that works is that maybe, just maybe, there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe there never has been anything wrong with you. And just because you can get some professional to say that there is and you're willing to agree with them still doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. And so it's possible, like a log going in a fire, that you're just uncomfortable because the world is very uncomfortable and very hard to negotiate. So if you can enter the game with maybe there's nothing wrong with me, even when I'm like extremely uncomfortable, that will open up a lot of doors. If you can embrace the possibility that one of the experiences that life has for us is being highly uncomfortable. It does not mean there's anything wrong with me. It just means I'm experiencing something highly uncomfortable. So the advice is really simply, maybe, just maybe, there's nothing wrong with you.
There's nothing wrong with you, people. It's only in the mind. So let's talk about the science and spirituality. How do you reconcile Torah based healing with the modern psychology or neuroscience?
Well, I don't think the neuroscience has anything to say that would negate the Torah at all. There's nothing in the modern science world that negates the power of what the Torah allegories have to say. I'm a maximum scientist. I've been a scientist for 36 years, and the idea here is that what scientists do is they present hypotheses and test to see if they're workable. And so there's nothing that says that the Torah is not workable. There's nobody in science who would, who use the scientific method and prove that the Torah is not useful or that any of the ancient texts aren't useful. So there maybe not that much reconciliation. It's just, this idea of, spirituality being at odds with science is a made up. It's entirely fabricated. And the fact is that they go together as well. This is just what it is to be human. We're all drawn towards a understanding of why are we here. And science in and of itself can't explain that. So like merging with spirituality or merging with the mystical or the cosmic gives science a big boost, or it gives the way that we look at life, how we look at life, a big boost by taking in the whole holistic consideration.
Let's talk about the community and legacy, Dr. Fred. How does your practice foster connection in the age of isolation?
So one of the things that I'm building is something called Mighty Networks. And some of your listeners might have heard of it. So I like bringing together people in a community where we can learn. All you have to do is like want to learn. All you want to do is like be expressive and want to learn and be open to people's opinions one way or another about anything. Being respectful, but creating a community of like-minded individuals who are looking for how to find purpose in a highly chaotic, highly charged life. And the way I do that is in my Mighty Networks platform, which is welcometohumanity.mn.co. That's where my Mighty Networks platform is. And, another place to do that is on podcasts. So I create community by being a podcast guest to whatever's happening here with your listeners. Some of them are agreeing with me. Some of them are a little skeptical. Some of them are, think it's great. Other of them probably don't think it's so great. There's a group of people who are really happy with the way the conventional psychiatric system has dealt with them up until now. And they're pretty happy with their diagnosis and they're happy with their treatment and they're happy with their medicine. They wouldn't trade it for the world. And what I have to tell those people is, yeah, please keep doing exactly what you're doing. I don't have a problem with that. If you've gotten to the place where you wouldn't trade wherever you are for anything else in the world, like this is the best that life is going to get and that's it, well, good for you. That's quite a spectacular place to be. And if you're going to, you should foster and nurture that experience. This conversation is more for the literally hundreds of millions of people who feel that the present psychiatric system, mental health system, has not been doing them optimal health and has left them feeling misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, mistreated, undertreated, overtreated. And there's time for a change, which means maybe you don't have to come into the conventional psychiatric system when you feel lousy. Maybe you can actually like embrace the possibility that feeling lousy, fortunately or unfortunately, is uh, very much part and parcel of being a human being.
Very well said, Dr. Fred. Very well said. And can you recommend a book that influenced your journey?
Can I recommend a book?
Yes, please. That influenced me.
One of my books, you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've written two books. One of them is called Find Your True Voice. I know that's surprising. Basically, what I'm helping people do is get to the bottom of why they're not being authentic with people. Back in the day, we learned how to pretend to be somebody in order to protect our real self, and then we never went back and fixed it. So many of us are actually walking around with a baseline of inauthenticity. So the book helps you find your authentic self in the face of that challenge. The crack in the cement got larger and larger. We never went back to repair it. And now we say things sometimes that we don't, we might even say things when we shouldn't, or we might not say things when we should, or even worst case scenario, we might actually um, say things that even we don't believe. If we're not going to speak our true self, if we're not going to be authentic, then we're not going to have the capacity to actually connect with other people. So the book, Find Your True Voice, is really aimed at that. And then the other book I've written two. The other book I had is Creative Eight, Healing Through Creativity and Self-Expression. That was written before Find Your True Voice. And that's really about exercises that I have for my clients and for people in general. Like just a few times a day, if you can activate the creative side of yourself through art, music, dancing, singing, drama, cooking, writing, gardening, those are the eight, then you can find some peace. I notice that when people are creating, when people are, actually being creative in their life, their tendency towards feeling that there's something wrong with them tends to disappear. So this is a really great tool to realize that when we're being self-expressive, we open ourselves up with being other humans. And by being with other humans, we create the possibility of true and honest healing.
Indeed, true healing inside of you. So, Dr. Fred, what would you say to someone who feels disconnected from tradition but seeks spiritual healing?
Someone who feels disconnected from
Tradition but seeks spiritual healing.
well, periodic disconnection is a normal human experience. And if what you're thinking is that you can, that's where my book is. Thank you for showing that. If what you think is that you want to be connected, I invite you to open up your mind, find a teacher, find somebody who you like, who they're being. You actually admire them one way or another, and uh, wrap up to them and ask them what kind of text or what kind of spirituality they're pursuing. In this case, I don't pretend to be a Torah scholar by any nature, and I'm not going to be able to, teach people the Torah. But I think for me, the Torah has served a maximum purpose of creating the possibility of peace and groundedness. And I do believe that there are other ancient practices and texts that are written that do a very similar thing. So whether or not you're Christian or you're Muslim or you're Chinese or you're Indian or wherever your ancient texts come from, including Indian, like American Indian, indigenous population, they all provide a possibility of creating connection. And you have a choice when you feel disconnected. You can stay disconnected and then declare yourself as disconnected, right? You can do that. Like if you're disconnected, one of the things to do is to stay disconnected and then complain about being disconnected. Or you can find your fear, the fear of connecting, because you're not really afraid of connecting, by the way. You're afraid of losing connection. You're afraid of gaining a connection and then having it taken away from you. So you're never really afraid of connection. You're just afraid of the backside when it breaks down. So if you really want to connect, you do have to take a risk and realize that there are people out there that are very interested in connecting with you as well. And though it is becoming more and more prevalent that people are canceling each other, or if you say this about that, then I don't want to be your friend. And it has become more challenging in recent times, I suppose. But ultimately, you have a choice between staying isolated, allowing yourself to be isolated, and being afraid to speak for fear that you'll be disconnected, or just being disconnected, or just being connected and, looking for like minded individuals for which you can listen and learn, but maybe also contribute and teach.
Indeed. Before we wrap up our discussion for today, Dr. Fred, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, book 101 review in fifth season, comedy 101 in second season, and food 101 in each fifth season as well. Geography 101 and love letters in third season, and Mental Health 101 in each first season. This is my baby podcast, people, baby podcast. And Movie 101 review and Music 101 in its fourth season, Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season too. So please do listen to them
Very
wherever
good.
you
Yeah,
listen your podcast.
very excited to do that. Sure.
Thank you so much. So, Dr. Fred, what is your vision for the future of Torah inspired healing practices?
Well, my vision is that when people release themselves from leaning as if it is a truth, when people relieve themselves from leaning on the conventional psychiatric system as a pursuit of healing, that they will naturally be left in a space where they are spinning into whatever is next. And I think that one of the things that will show up in that space of, of vulnerability will be the opportunity to explore some of the ancient texts or the ancient practices and see if they fit. And try them on, like be open and be aware and be honest. And if you want to choose one that's consistent with your culture, go ahead. And if you want to choose one that's different than your culture, go ahead. I mean, we're in a time where all of the information is available. You certainly can download anything you want from Chinese tradition, or anything you want from Indian tradition, or anything you want from, Muslim tradition or anything you want from Jewish tradition or Christian tradition, or even if you don't want to go with religious, you can go with Buddha, or you can go with even the most recent, the most recent philosophers in Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, or you can go on multiple different spaces. But I do invite you to keep your mind open that maybe you don't know everything you think you know.
Indeed, Dr. Fred Moss, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your books as well as your profession itself?
Yeah, so it's my pleasure to offer my books to your listeners. Findyourtruevoicebook.com. It's findyourtruevoicebook.com is where you're at here. And that book will get you this, or that site will get you this book for free. It's only the cost of shipping and handling. And my other book you can get in a PDF or in an audio form on my website. And then, of course, don't forget to step by my Mighty Network site to welcometohumanity.mn.co. And if you want to take a look at the website, one space to do that would be drfred360.com. So it's not twice, just say it once, drfred360.com.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Fred Moss because if you support him, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more and more empowering healing to come. Dr. Fred Moss, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. It was a beautiful conversation.
Monica people, see you soon.